Hey, YouTube! Hillbilly rideshare driver coming at you again. 2 in 1 night. What about that? What about that? All right. So let's see what we got going on here. I don't remember subscribing to the Flat Earth Thomas Scott News. He must have had some story that I want to read. Looks like Earth. Yeah, Uber hints. All right. Yeah, come on now. Anyway, I just got a, well, not just, I was pinged out for a, yeah, I know this isn't the topic that I posted. I'll get to that. Sorry about that. I was waiting to see where that car was going. I stopped to get some petrol, and actually, I did stop to get petrol, but well, that sign's right in the way of traffic. Interestingly, I had a ping, a long distance pickup, and it's gonna get dark. You're not going to be able to see my beautiful mug shortly. As I've said before, it's West Virginia. It's dark in most places whenever it's nighttime. Don't live in a big city with all the conveniences of the street lights. But anyway, I posted a video last week. I was kind of upset about, because I got a long distance pickup fee, which should have been quite a bit more than I got paid for it. They paid me $2.11 for the long distance pickup, and it was like 16 miles out away, something of that nature. Hopefully I can keep a stream. It seems, well, we'll see. We always hope that, don't we? Anyway, it's still Friday night, May 4th here. Anyway, I went back and forth with the Uber support, thinking that they calculated it wrong, and after a couple of messages from them, I saw that they weren't going to give up on it. They weren't going to pay me properly on it. But what I did learn was they calculate your when the long distance pickup fee starts, they calculate that by time, then pay you mileage after you have reached that time. So basically, I think it's 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, at least, I guess there's different markets, but here I think it's 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, they'll start paying you mileage to go pick up someone on a long distance pickup. So I had one last weekend. I had one, and they didn't pay me right on it. I don't care what they say. I honestly was so mad I didn't even drive. I took like that ride and one more just to see that night, and I logged out, went home, and didn't drive any last weekend after that. But anyway, I just got another one, and I was being meticulously attentive to it. And I got one. It was 26 minutes away. And so I calculated 10 minutes. It was 8:01, 8:11. I looked at my mileage to see if I was going to get paid the extra miles from the 10-minute mark, as they said. Well, turned out it was a no-show. So that kind of torqued my lug nuts. And so I decided the passenger wouldn't answer me. So I decided I'm going to let it run. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to see how long it takes before Uber cancels the ride for the customer, or how long it'll take before the customer cancels the rider. The answer is never. At least this one, they never canceled. Uber, it must have been, well, it's 9:43 now, but I did finally end up canceling it a while ago, but I probably waited a good, I just left it. I thought, piss on it. I'm going to let it run just to see what happens. And hey, you know, if I get a Lyft ride, I'll take a Lyft ride. If I get whatever, I'm just going to leave it, see what happens. Nothing happened. Uber didn't cancel it, and the rider didn't cancel for some reason. I have no idea why someone wouldn't cancel it. You know, it's college kids, so who knows. But when I finally did cancel it, they paid me a $15 cancellation fee, charged the customer $20, which I don't know if they calculated the fact that I had to drive a long distance, because usually a cancellation fee here is $3.75. But anyway, now on to my topic. And there's been a lot of videos about it, and I'm not doing it as necessarily, you know, jumping on the bandwagon or whatever. This was a court ruling. It doesn't necessarily mean that any changes that are made are going to be global. Doesn't mean that Uber is going to find a way to make everyone an employee in every market. Although it very likely could. Even a small business, if you do towns, you have different rules and regulations in different towns. You have different tax structures. In one town, the surrounding towns may require that you have to register and pay taxes, additional taxes. Work is done in that town, even though your company is not legally, physically in that town. That video output's low. I'm gonna pause it here first. I'm not physically pausing it. I'm just kind of going on decent. It seems that though should be, for instance, decided that they were going to break them up into and put a character limit on them. And then not only that, not only did they break them up into multiple messages, there's no indication that this message is you know, one of two or one of three or whatever, and they come in out of order. So, you know, they may break a message up into two or three, and hell, you might get the one, you know, you might get number two, then number one, then number, or any combination. Just usually, I mean, there again, thumbs up, Sprint. You're number one. And I know that that particular thing is not Sprint only. I know that other carriers do the same thing. And I thought, you know, whenever they did away with, you know, most people most people don't have packages, or the people that don't have limits on their text messages or their data usage. Like I don't. I have unlimited, and I mean there's no limit on it, but I'm not saying they don't throttle me back if I go too much, but no limit on the number of text messages or any of that stuff. Man, I'm trying to kill some time here. I mean, I'm on the interstate. I should be rocking out here with signal. I don't know what's going on with Sprint. Maybe they have some network issue. Well, I was going to get off that exit. Hey. I should be rocking the signal now, man. I don't know what's up. But, thought maybe if I fresh. Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm full LTE now. I don't. YT Gaming isn't keeping up with the times here. But I guess I'm gonna get on with it and hope for the best. All right, so. An employee. I hate that feature on Uber. It just bugs the piss out of you. If you don't keep their freaking app front and center, they want to time you out. But the court ruling on, are we contractors or are we employees? And some people are speculating that there is going to be everyone is going to be converted to employees. I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not. They could appeal that ruling. They could just change the employees that's affected in that state, maybe, that area, that market. I'm not sure how they're going to handle it or if they will handle it, because coming from an employer's perspective, myself, for many years I had employees, and you just don't make people employees. I mean, we all know you know, the reason that when Uber originally started, and I don't have fact on this, but it made sense. It made business sense, because this is just sort of the way businesses calculate labor. In a business, to figure out expense and profit and things like that, generally businesses will calculate their labor expense to be no more than 30%. Some businesses push 26%. Some businesses, 30 is normally the high end of it. 30 is normally 30% is normally what labor costs should be. Okay? So, if you go higher than 30%, a normal business scenario, your profit goes down. You start losing money. Yeah, and that's the reason that I assumed initially Uber was paying us 25 or 30%, was based on that business model. Of course now, or I'm sorry, they were taking 30%, which meant, I got that backwards. I got my mouth backwards of my thought process. Yes, business structures normally structure at 30% labor. When there is a contractor situation involved, it is customary in many businesses who use subcontractors and stuff to figure a 30% profit off of the contractors, which means normally a contractor, for instance, if I was an actual contractor, which I am actually a contractor, I have 8 contractor's license, but in that role, I would calculate a 30% profit for myself and figure to pay my subcontractors or my contractors 70%, which all that made sense. It's sort of the flip side of it, because you are normally in a contractor situation, the contractor would have the most, they're a business, they would have the brunt of the expense, the operating expense and such, because, you know, we own our own cars, we have our own insurance, we pay our own gas, we pay our own health insurance, you know, there's none of that normal overhead kind of stuff. We pay our own taxes, which that in and of itself is a huge deal. Most people who work hourly jobs do not understand the actual expense of having an employee, besides the liability, besides the responsibility. In many areas, you have a workers' compensation insurance. They call it workers' compensation insurance, but it's actually a freaking tax. That number can be astronomical alone, depending on what class of employee you have, which basically means what is the risk, what is, for instance, you know, a dude at McDonald's, employee at McDonald's is, that business is being charged much less because they have much less risk. They're on a lower scale than, say, a roofer, or you know, a cable or telephone employee, or an oil field worker. So there's much less risk involved, because you know, normally if someone gets hurt at McDonald's, it's going to be a slip, fall, cut, a burn, you know, something relatively minor that they will recover from pretty quickly. Whereas you know, if a roofer gets hurt, probably the most likely issue is going to be falling from a roof. Well, I think it's at 25 feet, 20 or 25 feet. You have a 50-50 chance. 20 or 25 foot fall, I believe. At that height, you have a 50-50 chance of dying. Above that height, it goes exponentially higher risk of death. So you have, and then depending, you know, that's a roofer, you know, and then you get into other fields, and their workers' compensation gets to be pretty crazy. You know, in the thousands, tens of thousands of dollars a month to have just a handful of employees in a higher risk job. And that's just for workers' compensation. And then if you have a claim, or when you have a workers' comp claim, you're rated. You are rated based on the claim. And your rating determines your premium. Which means if you have injuries, it goes up. Okay, well, anyway, do I want to be an employee of Uber or Lyft? No. Is there a way they could make it attractive? Yes. Is there a way they can make it attractive as an employee? Yes. And I haven't really heard anyone talk about this scenario, and probably because it isn't a real popular method of payment. And it might not be popular with Uber either, because they would essentially need to, in order to make it attractive, they're basically going to have to flip the script. So instead of, you know, X amount, we get X percentage or whatever, they're going to have to bump up their game. Because we're still in a situation where we are contractors. We own the risk. It's our vehicle. It's our fuel, and so on and so forth. But there is an option rather than just a flat, oh well, hourly rate. And of course there are possibilities for some pretty heavy restrictions as far as that still says video output low. What the heck is the matter with YT Gaming? Hopefully it's okay and I don't have to delete this and do it over, but if they just want to flip everyone over and say, okay, we're going to pay you whatever per hour, figuring out a good hourly rate is going to be pretty hard. And then on the other hand, figuring out a good hourly rate for, say, San Francisco versus West Virginia. Are they going to pay differently in San Francisco or LA or New York City or here? They probably would, which isn't fair, obviously. If they pay LA people more because the hourly rate's more, the cost of living's more, I'm doing the same job here. You know, what's a good number? I have no clue. I don't like the hourly rate thing. I don't want to be an employee because no matter how it starts out, it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get, as problems come up, as issues arise, it's only going to get worse. The rules are going to get stricter, and while at first they likely won't make you schedule when you're going to drive and all that, but eventually they will have to. they will eventually come around and say, we got to have drivers. And we got to have them here, and we got to have them here, and we got to have them here. And if there's 5 drivers in this town and they only need 2 drivers, then you're either not going to work or you're going to go somewhere else. What about competition? How are they going to handle the fact that if they're going to pay me $15 or $20 an hour and Lyft's going to pay me $20 an hour, what about running both platforms? Well, maybe at first they might not restrict you from working or the other platform, but they will either find a way so that you can't work the other platform, or they will just straight out tell you that you cannot work the other platform during your scheduled time. And they're going to do that by requiring a certain acceptance rate, because that was the whole thing. Since we were subcontractors, they could not penalize us because we didn't accept a ride, because we were independent contractors, quote unquote, and we could decide who we want to pick up and who we don't. As an employee, that goes away. They got all the marbles in an employee-employer relationship. If your employer, if you go to McDonald's and they tell you to go wait on a customer, and you say, I don't feel like it, I don't want to wait on that one, I'll wait on that one over there, that's not gonna fly. That's gonna be like a turd in a punch bowl, dude. It just isn't gonna. Whatever. So there's going to be some growing pains. Part of those growing pains is going to be even higher rates for passengers. And who knows what the rates will be. Then you have taxes. As an employer, there are taxes that are not withheld from the employee's paycheck. Yes, you pay FICA, which is Medicare and Social Security. You pay state tax, you pay federal tax. And unless there's some kind of weird tax or something. Now, if you work, there are cities that, for instance, if you don't live in that town, if you aren't a resident and you go to work in that town, you draw a paycheck from that area, you have to pay a fee. So there's that. But even if Uber took care of that, whatever. But there are B&O taxes for individual towns and localities. There are extra sales taxes involved that are not withheld from an employee's paycheck. There's FUTA and SUTA, which is federal unemployment tax and state unemployment. There are also, like I said, there could possibly be other things, but the big one is Social Security. That's 7.65%. You pay 7.65% as an employee. Your employer has to pay 7.65% to match it for Social Security. that's a lot of expense. So when you have a contractor who you do not have to not only deal with withholding taxes, so you don't have to deal with all that, but just the sheer, it's just a huge burden and expense off of a business whenever in a contractor subcontractor, independent contractor type situation, because of not only the taxes, the paperwork, the bookkeeping, the filing of taxes, the whole thing. Can you imagine you have 2 million employees that you have to not only pay taxes throughout the year, you have to do all the paperwork in the localities and that would be a nightmare. That expense alone, who knows what that could be. So that money's going to come from either the passenger or the driver. But there is another way besides hourly. It's called piece rate. Some of you might know what piece rate is. Piece rate is a method of paying an employee. They can still be an employee. They withhold taxes and all of that, but that employee gets paid a piece of the for whatever piece of work they did, they get paid for. For instance, on some factory lines, it's piece rate that get paid for. That employee gets paid for gets paid so much per piece of whatever they assemble or fix or make or do. So it could be a piece rate situation where Uber just says flat out, we're going to give you $5 per ride, or we're going to give you $10 per ride. Now that doesn't exonerate them from overtime. The employees are still going to be subject to overtime unless you're a contractor. The employee is still going to be subjected to overtime after 40 hours. And if you do work overtime, it has to meet a wage. So if those employees, if Uber says we're going to do this, is what we're going to do, and after 40 hours you get paid time and a half. So if you make whatever it is, it has to be at least minimum wage. That's the law. If you do one ride over 40 hours, you have to be paid the entire week, or the hours if you are actually working and you only do one ride. It still has to meet that minimum wage level. So if you work 50 hours, then 10 hours of that, what has to be calculated is in 40 hours, how much did you make? And then whatever that number is needs to be calculated out at time and a half for that extra time. That's the legal way to do it. I have no clue how they're going to handle that, if they're only going to allow 40 hours. Because if you're logged in, you're logged in as an employee. If your boss, if you work at a sticks and bricks job and you show up and your boss says and you make $10 an hour, and your boss says come in, and you're scheduled to come in, and you go in and you wait on one customer, but you're there 8 hours, still get your 80 bucks. You're logged in, you're clocked in, you were there. So this could be a huge deal for Uber. Screwing Uber as far as profit wise, because I'll be honest with you, if they cannot make a profit stealing 50% from their drivers, they ain't gonna make it with W-2 employees. There's not enough meat on the bone. If they're making 50 cents for every dollar they charge the customer, and they are still losing money, there's no way that they would be able to put the drivers on as employees. I don't know. I mean, Uber, it isn't a secret that Uber isn't making money. But if they aren't, since they aren't, they aren't going to make it as employer-employee relationship. W-2, the W-2 employee versus 1099. 1099 is a contractor kind of thing, and that's what you get. You basically get a statement, or there is a statement that exists, basically the amount of money that you've been paid, and that's what you file your taxes on. Whereas with the W-2, you have taxes withheld, and you account for that on your taxes to deduct. What goes away are a lot of deductions. Now, there is still mileage. You can still write off mileage as an employee. But there are certain deductions that are going to be lost in an employee type situation. But we'll see. Maybe they'll do some type of a combination of things, which I really hope not. They could say, we're going to pay you minimum wage plus 40 cents a mile. Well, you're basically going to be working for minimum wage plus 12 cents a mile. That's what you're going to be doing. Because I think the federal deduction is 52 cents. That's what they worked out, you know, as an average, some more, some less. I don't particularly like that. Ooh. There I am yawning. Oop, I gotta. Anyway. Oh, and because you are not going to be able to write off, if the federal government, if they say 52 cents a mile is it, and your job pays you 40 cents a mile, then you're essentially only going to be able to deduct 12 cents a mile on your taxes, whatever the difference is. And I mean, it might show up as mileage expense or whatever on your thing, but it's basically going to show up as income on your taxes. And, you know, we'll see. I'm interested to see. I'm not one of those people that rely on this gig primarily. I'd probably go crazy if I was. I go crazy now sometimes. But anyway, there it is. I'm going to have to go back and watch this later and see how bad the video quality was. But
Later on, y'all.